Don't tell your life is what you make it. Now who say we won't make it? Not time. Oh yeah. And then you hear them lectures from the rich man. Tell me who is the money rich man? Some politician man. I strive to make it every day. And spiritually, no. Not
I don't know what she does to me, but she's the one who can set me free. I try hard not to let her see, but she knows it, and she knows it. There's no way I could understand, even though I know she's got a man, and he wasn't a part of the plan, and I know it, and I know it.
Do you see the mics pulsing now
Yes.
on the bars?
All right.
Visions in my mind, they tend to speak to me, telling me what's wrong in this world and how I should.
Dreaded AV syncing that happens at every event, and you end up wanting to throttle the people that do it.
Yeah.
And that's why you do the dry run the night before.
All right, we're up.
Are we up? Can we hear us?
John, you can hear us? Yes, I can. Yes, you're on.
I have no.
So we're back live, and we have had the AV issue from heck, I won't say hell, but I'll say it's kind of like hell. But we are back, and this is live TV, live computer, and I do hear you guys, and I'm hoping you do hear me, and I'm looking at my guys in the back studio, and they should be able to hear me. Randy, you can hear me because you're sitting next to me.
I can hear you.
Yep, and we're all good to go. Thank you so much, guys.
Are we back?
We're back.
This is great. We are back. So we're going to start off again. It's a beautiful day in Pittsburgh for the third time. You know, it's Groundhog Day, blue sky, people are voting. Question I had that we let off before with Mike is I noticed yesterday when I got the results from the first day of voting from Pandora, who's our director at the Board of Elections. About 51 people have voted. 47 were from Pittsburgh, about 4 from Siler City. Seems like it's a challenge for people to come over from Siler City. And I thought in 2017 when mayoral candidate Albert Reddick that time raised the issue, and there was a bit of a kerfuffle, that there seemed to have been a consensus that there would be funding or an effort to have early voting in Siler City. Michael, what do you remember about that?
I remember asking the question just a couple weeks ago and not being able to get an answer because nobody really had an answer. I don't know why we didn't do it this year other than it wasn't a presidential election. I think that there's a good chance we'll have it when we have the next presidential.
Well, we always have early voting in the county during the congressional and the presidential years. You have your site in Siler City, and they've had one in Golston, and they have 2 sites in Siler City.
Well, what we're doing this year is we're doing a beta site for the new equipment that the Board of Elections wants to use.
At the Paul Braxton Center?
Right. At the Fit Center, we're going to have the equipment we've had for years.
Right.
And then right next door in the gym, we'll be set up with the new voting equipment, and they'll be testing that.
They'll be testing that equipment.
How they do that, I don't know.
But I hope that sometime in the future that Chatham County can have early voting at its larger municipalities for everyone and can get that coordinated. I know that it made a difference in Wake County. I had read a recent article where turnout in Cary and Raleigh was much higher, and it was due in part to investments by their Board of Elections in getting early sites open and hours lengthened for Cary and Raleigh. So let's get back to a question about you. You're running. You're on the ballot. Kind of linking back to the point of turnout, you said that your district, and you run in a district.
That's correct.
What's the district? The third district?
That's the western edge of Siler City as you go toward Asheboro.
As you go out of town, the western side. You said it had roughly 700 or so registered voters.
That's correct.
And on election days, how many voters do you usually see that are voting from your district?
The first time I ran, I think the number was like 240 or 50, and then the next year it wasn't that many. It was like 220.
So, we're not getting the turnouts, in municipal races that we'd like to see. I think Chatham County municipalities have typically been higher, but this has been a problem not just Chatham County, but statewide and nationwide. That would be another reason why we'd want those sites, so you'd get more voters involved, and that when you're elected, you'd have a mandate. So you're running for your third term?
Correct. This will be my third term. I've already served 2.
So, okay, let's just get down to it. The voters are looking at your name on the ballot. They know you've been there for two terms, running for a third. Who's Mike Constantino? Who are you?
I moved to North Carolina in 1962.
1962.
I've lived
Kennedy
here.
was still president.
He was. I remember the day he was assassinated. I was at the middle of Hillsborough Street at Oberlin Road, right in front of the bell tower at NC State, in traffic. When it came over the news, it was right around lunchtime. Traffic just stopped.
It just stopped.
Nobody was moving, and everybody was just kind of.
So what was Raleigh like when you got here? You came down here when RTP was first opening up. IBM had made a commitment to kind of anchor RTP.
That's
what was
correct.
it like?
Raleigh had about somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 people, if you can believe that, compared to what it is now. Cameron Village had just opened.
It was award-winning.
Yeah, it was a unique shopping center. Everything was open to the outside, and it was surrounded by apartments. And it was my good fortune at that point that it was, because they were renting them for like $76 a month for a 2-bedroom, and it included water.
So it included water and sewer. And this gets to the point of affordable living. I mean,
Right,
$76 a month, including water and sewer, is a nice lease amount. I think you said earlier that you actually saw Martin Luther King Jr. In Raleigh.
March in Raleigh, yeah, on Fayetteville Street.
Wow.
This was before they closed Fayetteville Street and made it like a park where you couldn't go up and down the street.
But he closed Fayetteville Street, and they were marching for a vote, the Civil Rights Act and the
All
Voter
those
Rights
issues,
Act.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, you're in Raleigh. You come down here from Ohio. How did you end up in Siler City?
I lived in Raleigh for a little over 40 years, retired in 2000, and
And what did you retire from doing?
I was a manufacturer's representative. I would contract with people that built the things for the electronics world, the computer world, and then I had my own company, and I tried to sell them to the RTP
So
people.
at some point you're retired and you come out to beautiful Chatham County. You and I have a mutual friend, Peter Naylor.
Right.
You were you were saying to me that you ended up at a party.
Yeah,
And
we had
what happened?
We had a pig picking. He had the pig picking at his farm that he did on occasion, and I met Wanda Lindley at the time, and the rest is I've been married to her for 15 years. We dated for about 5 years before that because I was traveling a lot and we didn't see each other much.
So you were on the 5-year layaway plan. It took 5 years for you to actually woo her?
I'll tell you what. Yeah, till one day she said, "Okay, what's the deal? What are we doing? You know, if we're not going forward, we're not going anywhere."
So her name is Wanda Lindley. Is she
Right.
related to Lindley Mill, the famous Lindleys in Chatham?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's that family. Her ex passed away a couple years after we got married. I never met any of that part of the family.
So you
So
met
I
at a
don't-
pig picking. So as they say, good things happen over the pig, and you end up coming to
Absolutely.
Siler City. So what made you jump in and run for commissioner 2 terms ago? Why'd you do it?
My family is involved in politics in Cleveland, Ohio. And that's
Okay.
where I moved down here from.
So it's in the blood.
Yeah, I have cousins that are city councilmen there, like I am here. I have Jack Kennedy was president at the time when I moved, and I had a cousin that was the mayor of Cleveland that Kennedy picked as his secretary of health,
Really?
education, and welfare. And so, you know, it was that kind of thing. There was always that kind of thing going on around the house and in the neighborhood. And we all lived in the neighborhood. You know, my dad, his brother, his 2 sisters, and their husbands all helped build a church, a Catholic church, bring a priest over from Italy, from the
Right.
community that most of these folks were from. I'm first generation here, and all of my family did the Ellis Island thing, and they came through Ellis Island, you know, and they had to be
So
sponsored.
you basically have lived the American dream. Family came over,
Absolutely.
you worked hard, you got an education, and now you live in beautiful Siler City. So why are you running again? And what we know it's in the blood, but why do you want to run for a 3rd term?
Well, when I got here, I didn't run until 2011, so I was here for
So you took some
Several
time
years,
like you
yeah.
did in chasing your wife.
well, yeah. When I moved here, the Collins and Aikman mill on 64 was empty.
Was
a
empty.
500,000 square feet and this big for sale sign hanging on the front of it. And there were rumblings about the chicken packing plants closing, and people were worried about their jobs. My neighbors that had businesses in town were worried about how they were going to keep their businesses open. And a friend of mine, Sam Adams, who was the president of the Fidelity Bank on 64, he and I talked many times about me running. He was trying to encourage me to do it, and I finally conceded to do it, and went and paid my $10, and I was on the ballot, and
And you won.
I won. And my wife's family called me the next day and said, "How'd you do that? Nobody knows you." And I said, "Well, that ought to tell you something about the state of affairs here in town."
So you came out, got on the ballot the first time, and of course we've talked about some of the things that you've done that you feel proud about. One of your accomplishments is working with Paul Quadros, who is the coach over at Jordan Matthews of the Jets men's soccer team. They've won a state title. It's a pretty famous book they have out.
He wrote a book, yes, that got a lot
And
of
you helped work on getting more soccer fields built. Tell
That's correct.
us about that.
Paul called me one day, and I met him for lunch, and he told me about what he had done. It was a couple of years that he'd been trying to get a soccer field in Siler City because the Jets soccer team that had done so well in the 2A school sports system didn't have a home field.
They didn't have a home field.
No, every time they played a tournament game, they were the away team, and they would get sent to Manio, and they would get sent to Wilmington, and They'd be up in the mountains somewhere. Every tournament game was 2, 3, 4 hours away. And I said, well, how can they do that? How can they ride the bus for that long, get off the bus, play a competitive game, hope to win, get back on the bus and ride back home, and 2 days later do it again? And Paul said, that's the problem. And he said, we've got money from a couple of nonprofits that would like to help us get that done here. Mm-hmm. And so Paul and I went to work on the board, and I have to tell you, it took 2 years for me to get them to approve.
As we've talked about, during,
Right.
you know, based on my experience in politics, you know, it's easy to get a no.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to get a yes.
Absolutely.
And you probably had to do a little education so they KNOW that they would know something about the topic, because, you know, a lot of folks are not willing just to jump in. So you had the money, you had the idea, but you got it done, and that's the key.
We had the labor force too. We announced when we finally got the approval, when we started building the soccer field, we put in a concrete pad and put in a basketball court, put the posts, backboards, everything brand new, put a fence around it, put new fencing around the soccer field, and the community knew that when the sod came, because we were going to put sod down so we could get moving faster, that we were going to invite everybody to come that day and spend the day helping us put the sod down, because we had to put a sod for 1.5 acres. And if the listeners out there would go to my Facebook and click on my face on that thing, they'll go right to my
I'm going there right now.
Constantino for Commissioner
Right.
page, and there's a video of that Saturday that we put the sod down.
And so this is also an expression of the demographic change in Siler City that I believe is now a majority-minority town. It's close,
It is.
but you have a large Hispanic population, and the sport of choice is soccer.
That's
And
correct.
so to address these residents and citizens in town, you got a soccer field built and worked with them to do it so that we could have recreational opportunities for the whole community.
That's correct. And in addition, I had some friends that were part of the administrative group at the Castle League headquarters in Raleigh.
Right.
Because I have 6 sons, and they played in the Castle League growing up, and they have over 800 teams there now. And so I met with them on a couple of occasions, brought the town manager, Charles Johnson, who was the mayor at the time.
I remember Charles well. He was a good man.
He was, and a couple of other people that were on the board, to Raleigh to meet with the groundskeeper of the Wake Med soccer field there,
Right.
where they play professional soccer now. And it was amazing to see them, the way they looked at those fields, because even the practice fields, the fields number 7, 8, 9 down the line, looked every bit as nice as the main one in the
Oh, they're
in the arena.
gorgeous.
Oh, they surely are. And I said, we can do this in Siler City, and if we do, we can get high school tournaments there. Now, we won't get these international league teams coming in probably. Who knows? But we could get, and I'm talking to the Castle people, they said, these teams that we have here, if they have to take a road trip for an hour,
Right.
it could be an hour, it could be 10 hours. They don't care. That's out of town. That's a trip.
So this is a success story for the community.
Right.
So leading into, what are you going to do if you were, if you're honored to be reelected for a third term? What is Michael Constantino going to do for the citizens and voters of Siler City if you get in a third term? What's on your list?
Several things. One is affordable housing for certain. And I can tell you at this point, we know that the hospital grounds, the old hospital that's
Right.
already been demolished, there's going to be 71 two-bedroom condos built there on that property.
Is that going to be a tax credit program through the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency where you're going to have income-based,
No,
is
not
it-
there.
not there? There's another project I thought.
The Henry Siler School property. We're going to build 60 apartments and condos there, and those will be built without any issues with the original Henry Siler School building. It'll look just like it does now because of its historic value.
Right.
And the permits are in place to do all of those things. As a matter of fact, people driving down 3rd Street, if they look at the Henry Siler School building, there's a big bulldozer parked in front of it right now.
One of the issues with housing in Chatham County and Siler City is substandard housing, that people have housing, but it's falling apart around them. Landlords might not have kept up with the building codes, so forth and so on. How do you, in the third term, how would you address that? What would be your moves to address that type of housing?
Well, we're going to be these condos and apartments are going to have to conform to all the latest codes. No
right.
question
The new
about
ones.
it. The new ones,
The
yes.
old ones.
There's not much. I don't know what we can do about the old ones because of the grandfather clauses and stuff. But we have already demolished, I think, 4, maybe 5 abandoned homes
Right.
in Siler City that were overgrown with kudzu and stuff, and we've cleared the lots. And we're going to continue doing that. And it's difficult to do. We have to notify the owners, and if they've passed away, then we've got to find all of the.
I think you do in Siler City because you have your own building inspections department. I think you have the authority to make some of these moves.
It still takes time.
It takes time.
Yeah, it's not something we can do in 30 or 60 days.
So speaking of something that took time, years ago, the chicken plants shut down. They bailed out.
That's correct.
And they left you guys holding the bag on your enterprise fund. So a big hole in the budget for water and sewer. You now have Mount Air operating, and
That's
they
correct.
have how many employees? 1,400.
They're over 1,400 already, and they have 2 shifts going, and they're in the process of organizing and hiring the 3rd shift, which was always the plan.
So what's
from
the
beginning.
effect that you've seen on the town side as far as your budget, for instance?
Well, we have to, you have to take into consideration that they're buying 1.5 million gallons of water a day.
And so what does that mean to the bottom line for Siler City?
It's pretty significant. We've done a lot of negotiating with them to get competitive with where their other plants are and what they're
Right.
paying other communities for water, and we were able to do that. Although we're getting a little more than a lot of the other ones are. We have.
But you're seeing real money come in at this point on the water
The
side.
check comes every month.
So tough question here. Out of the employees that they've gotten, have you been able to ensure that Siler City citizens are getting those jobs? I know there's an issue of training, and this is a very modern 21st century chicken plant. How, if that's not happening, how do you feel that you as a leader on the board can help working with Economic Development Corporation and others to make that happen?
Well, I've gotten to know Paul Nelson, who is the plant manager at the plant, and Mark Reef, who's involved both in human resources, so he's part of the hiring team, and town involvement, and being a good neighbor. And they certainly have demonstrated that they're a good neighbor. We had that chicken festival in downtown
Right.
Siler City, and when we said yes, we're going to do it, the next day they were in the office with a check that almost covered the whole expense of
So
the
they're putting money back into the community.
They certainly are. They certainly are. And as far as the individuals that are employed there, I can't tell you what the mix is from Siler City people to outside
Right.
of Siler City people, but they set up a training program at their Lumber Bridge plant, which is similar to the one they built in Siler City, and they let the new hires come in and park in Siler City. They had a bus there. They'd load them on the bus and take them to Lumber Bridge and bring them back. They would leave at their starting time and be back by their ending time, and they paid them for that. And when they opened in January of this year, they had a trained workforce for the first shift. I was invited to be with the first group that had the first tour of seeing the inside of that plant.
But you would support the notion if training was offered at the community college over there, or anything to help
absolutely.
get more jobs for people that
And
are
Randy,
local.
we do have a question from one of our viewers for Commissioner Constantino, and the question is, could you describe ways in which Siler City and Pittsboro work together?
We're in the same county. We have the same issues, although Pittsboro's are magnified by all the construction that's going on here. The infrastructure issues and stuff got to be monumental. We our town manager, Brian Thompson, is now an assistant county manager here.
Right, he
and
took the job when
took
Renee
the job.
retired and
so,
Dan went out.
we have somebody we can talk to, and which I've done, and I think it's going to help us all. I don't think that I think Pittsburgh will probably run into the same problem Cary did. They ran out of dirt. They couldn't bring any more people in and as this community spreads out, we're going to see some of that overflow in the western part of the county.
And so to that, as we're wrapping up, early voting just started. Where is early voting in Siler City?
There is no early voting in Siler City.
There is no early voting in
we
Siler
addressed
City.
that earlier. That's been an issue.
Okay.
You have to vote in Pittsburgh if you're from Siler City, because there is not an early voting site funded in Siler City.
So as we're wrapping up, doesn't that seem to kind of disenfranchise some if they can't vote locally in their own town? I would think.
That's a good question. We have we've asked about that as board members, and the expense of doing that for a day is not for a day, for 10 days or however long they do it before the election. The expense of doing it, Pittsburgh offered to share that expense with us.
It was something like $4,000, give or take. But I want to address one quick thing, Aaron, on the cooperation. Going back in time when I was mayor, we did cooperate. We worked with Mayor Johnson. I worked with Larry Cheek, who's your mayor pro tem.
Yeah.
When I was the chair of TARPO, I helped Larry and worked together on how to get grants. And then when I retired, put the gavel down, he took the spot over there for 6 years, and he was able to secure millions of dollars in grants. So there has been a cooperative relationship. That's how you and I know each other.
And I'm going to
exactly
say,
right.
I'm going to say that perhaps we can work with Chatham Transit, since it is called Chatham Transit, see if we can work out some way they can donate some sort of transportation, because in knowing that if there's someone elderly or disabled and they want to vote and have to come all the way to Pittsburgh, I'm going to say, and I'm not nearly the politician that you guys are, I'm going to say that disenfranchises folks, and we need to take care of that. Brother Michael, you've been such a joy to work through our issues, and I hope you do come back to talk with Taj, the Chatham County Roundup, focus on Chatham, because we need you, we need your point of view, and we need more people from Siler City coming here. And while I'm on that topic, we want to highlight people, not just in Pittsburgh, we want to highlight all over Chatham County. So would you do me a favor, when you see people doing positive things in Siler City and noteworthy things, would you make sure we know about them so we can highlight them? Because we don't just want to talk about statues and Confederate flags, but we are about to talk about those things. We also want to highlight the positive things happening here, because we may not always know it. There is more positive happening than negative in this world.
That's exactly right.
There really is. There really is. We've really turned a corner.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, Michael, and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your support.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate having Commissioner Mr. Michael.
Whoa. L-O-L-O-L-O-L-O-V-E-E, yo. I sing a song about God's love and spread it to corners of all the universe. See, all in love. All in love. All in love. All in love. See, Jah loving, it shot me like an arrow. Got love pouring out from my heart, and I want to give you part. So I just keep reaching for all that's positive. Gotta reach for the positive. Wanna feel this love, all in love now. In love, we're all in love. There's so much love still inside of you. We're all in love, yeah. In love, all in love, yeah. It's just so simple now, and it's just more clear. Your messenger finally getting through your ears. And after all these long, hard years, with all this tragedy, this fear, but yet your love still remains right here. We're all in love, yeah. In love, we're all in love. There's so much love still inside of you. We're all in love now. All in love, we're all in love. There's something that's true still inside of you. I know you can't see, but it's there indeed. So way down inside, don't you let love hide. Just let your love go, and it grows and grows, yeah. It shot me like an arrow. Your love pouring out from my heart, and I want to give you a part. So I just keep reaching for all that's positive. Gotta reach for the positive. If you're gonna feel this all in love, if you're gonna feel this loving all in love, if you're gonna feel your love is real. All inside, God's loving, yeah. See, all in, all in, all in, all in, love, all in. See, all in, all in, all in, all in, love, all in. See, all in. We're all in, we're all in, we're all inside God's love. We're all in, we're all in, we're all in, we're all in, all inside God's love. All in love, yeah. This one going out to the people struggling all around the world. So many places, so many different faces. If only mankind could come together, we'd make life better, more easy. Instead of this creeping and crawling.
Take it away.
Great to be here again, Aaron. So we just want to make it clear, we're here right now with Pam Cash Roper, but all of the candidates, Aaron, could come on here. We've invited them. We'd love to be able to have them on, and we'll see what we can do to bring them on and talk to them about their campaign. It was great to interview Mike Constantino. So we got Pam.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Pam, I hope the viewers were able to see that incredible clip of you introducing future President Obama in 2008.
We're going to show that actually at the end
You're
of
going
the
to show that
segment.
at the end? Okay,
we're
so
gonna show it at the end.
so our viewers and listeners can understand. I've known Pam, I don't know, since the 1990s.
Right,
When your
right.
brother Shorty used to own what's now Burley's.
Right.
It's called
Scoreboard
Scoreboard back
at
in
the time.
the day.
Exactly.
I remember hearing about that.
Exactly.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I got a phone call from the Obama campaign when I was mayor here, and they were looking for someone that might have had some health problems to really talk about what's funny, still a very important issue, health care in this country
That's
and
right.
access to affordable health care.
Exactly.
And so Senator Obama was kicking off his campaign in Raleigh, and I think it was June 6th, and you agreed to do it. It got cleared by their campaign, and we went up there. Let's talk about that first kickoff, because you spent about 20 minutes backstage with the future president of our country.
Yes, I did. But the funny thing is, when you called me that night and you said, would you be interested in going and speaking for Obama? Have you decided who you're going to vote for? I said, well, yeah, I have. I'm going to vote for him. And you kept talking it up. And I said, but Randy, I'm a Republican. I've been a Republican for 30 years. And you're like, well, that's even better. So,
I remember, and you said that you came to it. You were an Eisenhower Republican, and
well, I was a Nixon girl.
when you got in as a Nixon girl, you were a
Yep.
nice girl, but you were changing because of this health care issue, and then you later became second vice chair of the Chatham County Democratic Party.
Absolutely.
And they were interested in your story. They originally wanted me to find someone that had been a Hillary Clinton supporter,
Right.
that had these issues. They were looking for a woman that kind of fit your description, and we found you, and they approved you. So tell the viewers what it was like to go back there. I was sitting there with my wife, Leslie,
Right.
and Governor Easley was going on and on.
Yeah, he was. I went backstage, and Obama and myself and Governor Easley were standing there talking, and Governor Easley looked at us and said, "Now I'm only going to be out there about a minute, and then we'll be ready for you to come. So you guys be ready now. I'm only going to be out there a minute." So we stand there, and he keeps talking. And Obama looked down at me and he said, "Didn't he say he was only going to be a minute?"
That's right.
And I said, "Yeah, but you can't trust him. He's a politician."
And Obama laughed, and I thought it was amazing that here you were with all of your experience as a nurse and having really been through the grinder with health care issues in your family, nearly bankrupting you, running
yeah.
through the 401k, and you were able to spend time talking to the future president of our country on an issue that was important to him.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and he listened to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely, he listened. And he's quite a man. He truly is. He's quite a gentleman. He listened and he understood, and I think they did the best they could through his entire
Administration?
yeah, because they were fought the entire time. He was never given an opportunity to truly do what he came there to do.
What he came to do. So
Exactly.
The amazing part was we did that first introduction. Then I get another phone call from the DNC, and they say, "Hey, would Pam Cash-Roper be willing to go to Denver?" And I remember calling you, and you said, had you ever even been in an airplane and fly? I mean, you might have been once or twice.
I had been one time. I flew a month to the day after 9/11 to Boston, to Logan Airport, taking a couple to their son's wedding. They were in their 80s. And
So you were not a jet setter.
oh, heavens no.
So this was flight number 2.
And I flew by myself.
So I remember
was
that
some-
you said, "Okay, well, I'd love for you and Leslie to come with me."
Yes.
So we went with you.
Yeah, you did.
And I
Well,
remember
you came out.
We came out, and I remember, I'd never been to one of these conventions, right? And I remember we go out there. It was bright and beautiful, and
Oh, it
you were
was.
supposed to speak on like Tuesday,
Tuesday. Yeah.
early on. Leslie and I go up to watch it, and President Carter is eating chicken to the left of us. We'll never forget that. She took a picture of it, and we're waiting. and we're waiting and we're waiting. And you never came on. What happened that first time?
Well, the first time they came out, and I had a handler, and he came out and he said, "Look, you've been bumped." And I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" And he said, "Well, that means you're not going home." And I said, "Okay, then get me out of here," because I had been behind doors. I mean, it's great for the people who go to the convention, but if you're part of the convention, you are behind locked doors. You don't get to see anyone really unless they come through where you are. And you have a handler that gets you water, gets you whatever you want, make sure you have food. But as far as enjoying the true atmosphere of the convention, you don't get to see it.
You were shoved in the green room.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And I remember you saying that you were caught in between an admiral or a general. Somebody
Yes.
high up in the military
Yeah,
was in
it
the
was a
speak,
general, yeah.
and Hillary Clinton,
Yeah.
and you kind of lost out.
I got kicked
You
out.
got squeezed.
I got squeezed. Just a common girl.
Just a common girl
Common
from
girl.
Pittsburgh, North Carolina, squeezed by Hillary Clinton
Couldn't-
and an admiral or general.
Couldn't overdo Hillary and the admiral.
And then I remember we left, and and the handler came up, and I said, it's not going to look very good if this woman who's had nothing but healthcare problems, lost her 401k, her husband is sick, and she came out here to tell a compelling story to the people
Right.
about what it's like to have issues with healthcare and have it nearly bankrupt you.
Well,
And so he said, you're right. And next thing I know, and Leslie and I, our ticket was, flying back the next day. They extended your ticket.
yeah.
And this is the amazing part. And you ended up going on stage with Joe Biden.
Yes.
Al Gore's up there.
Love Joe Biden.
And Barack Obama in front
Exactly.
of 80,000 people. Now, how did you go from I've done one flight in my life and maybe not done public speaking in front of more than just a family at a picnic?
Exactly.
How did you do that?
Well, I'm not real sure how I did that, Randy, except I guess, they decided they wanted to hear from somebody that wasn't an admiral and wasn't Hillary. I was standing there and they said, well, now you're going to go on and you're going to go on just before Obama comes out.
So you spoke right before our future president of the United States as he's accepting the nomination.
Yes, it was an experience.
From
It had
little
to
old
be.
Pittsburgh.
It
North
really
Carolina.
was.
Hey, don't knock Pittsburgh that much. Apparently, it ain't that little.
It ain't that little, brother.
Well, as far
no.
as I'm concerned, it's paradise.
So Pam, the other day I saw you at the NAACP meet the candidates,
Yes, sir.
and I had to get right to a question. We have someone coming up later, but one of the elephants in the proverbial room, or I guess on the proverbial streets right now, is not only the Confederate statue, but it certainly is that Confederate flag that has been placed directly across the street from Horton Middle School. It's an issue. I wish it wasn't an issue, because I know we need to talk about clean water. We need to talk about affordable housing. But I'm going to put that one out right quick and
Not a
just
problem.
get your feedback on that.
I think it is absolutely atrocious that someone would even allow a Confederate flag to be placed in front of the historically black high school that now my granddaughter goes there. She's 13 years old, and she sees that flag every day. And I've had to explain to her what racism and bigotry and hatred is about and why. And she kept saying, but Nana, why? That was a long time ago. I said, there is no why. We don't know why they do it. They just do it.
And we do have some folks who are going to come on. I wanted to ask you that, because I'm not going to let any candidate walk out of here and not ask that question too. But I know you have a platform that's more than that. So why don't you tell the people who are watching, listening, what is your platform and why should we be voting for you, early voting, and definitely in early November?
Well, I think you brought one of your flyers.
I
which
did.
has
I
kind
brought a
of,
flyer.
You've got folks out there canvassing.
Ooh, I like that. Nice.
Thank
and
you.
glossy.
You've got an endorsement from Jim
Crawford endorsed me, which was nice.
And that
It was-
picture with you introducing
This was
Obama.
Obama in Raleigh.
And before we get to your platform, I want to say something funny. A friend of my wife's said that she saw this picture and she knew that you'd been second vice chair in the party, and she thought you were a lifetime Democratic operative.
Yeah.
Until my wife explained, no, Pam was just a normal citizen here who they were
Right.
they were interested in her story about health care, right?
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
So flip it over and let's go through here and let's
Well,
talk about what you have on there.
See, I think we really do need to fund the improvements to our water system. Our water system has been patched and repatched, and this I've heard about the water like Bet Wilson Foley said the other day. I've been hearing about this since I was a kid. You know, this is not something that's just come up in the last 15 years.
Exactly.
This system has been patched, repatched, overpatched, and to the point that, you know, when they did the last one, it blew a main right there on Main Street that
Right.
shut it down for days right there in front of the restaurant. I mean, you can't keep patching. Sooner or later, we have to put out the money to do the upgrade for our water and sewer lines.
Around 6 o'clock this morning, someone sent me a text of the WRAL story that was, I guess, put out last night, this morning, or
Yes, they
something
had
like that. Yeah.
Haw River Assembly hosted
Yeah.
the scientists there over here at our Ag Center, but it's talking about they now know where the spike came from, the 1,4-dioxane that hit
Oh,
the
I
river
haven't seen that yet.
from Shamrock, which is a company up in Greensboro,
Gotcha.
where they're discharging into the river, and of course they had an abnormal spike, but we have too much of that chemical in the river, plus other
chemicals.
PFAS, unregulated chemicals. The issue is we've got a 1964 plant, so we've got a nice
Exactly.
1964 Mustang. There's only so much you can do with 1964 technology. We've done and done and done.
Exactly.
So you're committed to either building a new plant or finding a way to connect somewhere else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's good for the people to know.
Because we're not going to grow if we don't have the implements to grow with.
And we're not going to be able to serve the people here.
Well, and I'm sorry, and I'm not even going to apologize for this. We need to serve the people in this county and in this town before we serve anyone else.
And that goes right to the next, and we talked about this as affordable housing, which is a need with Chatham Park growing. I always say, well, who's going to police your streets? Who's going to teach your kids? Who's going to be rescue? And all those are very great jobs. The income doesn't necessarily always put those in place to afford some of the houses that are being built by Chatham Park. But we don't want people having to feel that they have to live outside of the community in order to be a part of the community. So tell us about affordable housing and where
Okay,
you
first,
stand on
I'm
that.
sorry, Aaron, but to me, if we want them to protect us, to fight our fires, to come and rescue us with EMTs, then we need to pay them a livable wage that they can live in this.
Agreed.
When I went to the fair, because I was politicalizing all over the fair and seeing people and giving
went
out
all
cards.
4 days.
I went all 4 days, and I paid to go.
Did you do the deep fried Twinkie Oreo cheeseburger, bacon cheeseburger sandwich?
No.
She's got to watch. She's got health.
I was going to say, my heart would have gone, okay. But there were 4 police officers. None of them live in Chatham County. Not one.
It's not good.
And that's not good because, if they don't want to live in Chatham, that's great. But a couple of them even said to me, we can't afford it. And we talk about these houses that Chatham Park's building. What about these houses that are being built by other builders? These $280,000 to $375,000 homes that are here that I couldn't, on my best day, when I was living the dream, the American dream, and making real money, I couldn't have afforded a $350,000 house.
Well, let's just go back to the root issue here about affordable living, and which is a
Sure.
unique part of your campaign. You are the only candidate running in Chatham County, but specifically in Pittsboro, that lives in affordable housing, affordable living. And I think I could be corrected that if you were to be elected, you would be the only person ever elected to the town board in Pittsboro who lived in affordable housing.
I'm sure.
So tell the viewers about that experience. You live in an award-winning community, Belmont Point, which is an income-based community. So it
Yes.
actually has a mix of incomes all the way up to 80% median income or beyond. It's
Exactly.
not all one income type.
No.
But tell the folks about how this has changed your life.
Oh my. I mean, I was living in a mobile home that was literally falling down around me. After my husband died, we didn't have the money to do. I mean, we did improvements, but after he died, it was like, I don't need to be up here. My kids didn't want me up there, but finding something affordable was. I mean, I live on $1,500 a month.
So you could not find something that would work.
Not in Pittsburgh, not around here.
I think you said at the East Chatham NAACP forum that, the roof was falling in and water was leaking on your head.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what happens. You get leaks in these places.
But
you know?
because the town worked with this developer and they put this in, what do you have now?
Oh my God, I have a wonderful place to live. I mean, it's beautiful. It's there's whoever designed it used all the space as conservatively as possible. I don't have to mow my yard, which I couldn't physically do anyway.
You can afford to pay the rent.
Exactly. I can pay my rent. My water bill and my sewer bill is within reason that you can afford it. We have a diverse group of people living there, and we all get together at the park and sit around and talk, and we talk about politics. We talk about Trump. We talk, which is still politics, except it gets personal. And it's a good way of life. It really is.
So you've got a community there.
We have a true community there. So when these people were saying that Belmont Point Apartments was put down in a hole and it was a ghetto, I have a real issue with the fact that people would actually use the term ghetto because we live there. I mean, that is not the end of the road. That's the beginning of the road that's going to go straight through, because Belmont is supposed to go straight through.
It'll connect to Chatham Forest.
Chatham
and some of it
Forest.
might
People
connect.
like to use words like that to be demeaning. I mean, people probably don't know the root of that word, but I like Belmont Park, Belmont Point.
Belmont Point.
Yeah, and it's a nice community.
Yeah.
It's clean.
Quiet.
If no one had told me that it was affordable house, I thought it was an
wouldn't know.
apartment complex.
Yeah.
And you know what? And to that point, here in Chatham County, we have the ability to do some really cool things along the lines of subsidized housing. We can have some cool housing with sustainable farms, with some solar panels. I mean, we have a great community college that does sustainable technology, sustainable farming. We could set the bar nationally if we wanted to, of having some really cool affordable housing, subsidized housing, where it's a cooperative type environment. I mean, no one's really thinking out the box, but maybe we should vote for you, and maybe you'll be thinking out the box for us. So, Pam, very quickly, as we're wrapping up, tell the people why early voting is important, tell the people why voting period is important, and give them your last elevator speech as to why you're the candidate that should be voted for.
Okay, the reason early voting is important is because what they have done, even with early voting, is they've cut back the hours, and by they, I'm not real sure who they are, except it's our
the Board of
Elections.
So we need to talk to them.
And we've got our hours cut back. We only have one Saturday, and that's the 25th.
26th, I believe.
If you can't get there Monday through Friday, then go the 26th and vote. And also be sure and go on Election Day if you don't get to go on the weekend, because your vote counts.
And are there any volunteer services? Again, I'm thinking about what about that senior man or woman lives by themselves, not mobile, but still wants to exercise their voting rights? Are there any volunteer?
They can call me.
There we go. I like that.
I have several friends who have volunteered to come, because at Belmont Point, we do have several people that don't drive anymore, that, we make sure they get their groceries and stuff like that. But I have several friends who have offered to taxi them there to the curbside.
That's what I'm talking
What's your
about.
phone number if they
And
want
my
to call or
number
text you?
is 984-999-8663.
One more time.
984-999-8663.
And I know you're right, because everyone's told me that you have folks out there knocking on doors like nobody's business. So, folks, she's got the contacts because she's got the team out there knocking on doors left and right. So if you need to get to the polls, this is what a legislation should happen, but this is what a candidate that would get my vote is someone who would be of the people like that. So,
Aaron, there's one thing I want to bring up.
Please do.
At the beginning, you made a reference to question about the flags, and at the forum, Pam brought up a very sad thing that happened. One of those pickup trucks that is running around with the Confederate flags actually drove into her community
Yep.
to agitate and anger the people there.
They just, they've got these two big Confederate flags, and they're just circle around because we have a circle-like area. I know you've been there, just to see if they can agitate.
well, I'm going to say this only because you brought this up, and all candidates are welcome on this platform. But I've had this sent to me a few times that there is a candidate who's running who made the effort allegedly. I need a sign that just says allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, invited the ACTBAC
The
Act
Act
Back
Back
people,
person, yeah.
Yes.
here, and they have been an integral part of a lot of the disruption in our community. And so, if that candidate or candidates who are part of that are listening, feel free to come on here. But in my personal opinion, as a member of this community, if you're going to invite people like that to disrupt our town, you cannot get my vote.
Exactly.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show,
Well,
Pam. I
thank you.
know how hard you're working. You're just an ordinary person that wants to serve, and if you'll be honored if elected, and if
Absolutely.
you don't get elected, you've made the commitment to serve as well on a committee or an advisory
If I don't
board.
get elected this time, there's always 2 years.
There's always 2 years, but good luck. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you,
on.
Pam, very much. We appreciate you here.
Song of prophecy. I see the moon come shining blood light. I see the time to turn my day into a night. It's time to hear the spoken words. Oh, people in a nation gather round and tell me, did you hear the trumpet sound? It's time to fly like a bird. It's time to go fly like a bird. Away up in the sky we go. We fly I got this brand new way of talking, a pleasant groove beneath my feet. When I was a child, slick as a child, and I know this sounds absurd. I'll reach your arm through the heavens and flap real hard. Y'all fly like a bird. Way up in the sky we go. You fly like a bird. Sweet by the fire. You fly like a bird. It's called the sun we go. You fly like a bird. Y'all sing. Today's a good day to be a good way. Well, night hits. Don't let your screw face erase.
A very good day.
All of your life.
The apostles from Atlanta.
Today's a good
Now,
day
round
to be
three.
a good way.
We've been talking about statues all day. So I do have
So nice.
Commissioner Karen Howard here to talk about all things, unfortunately, Confederate statue. Karen, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for your patience. So, you know, today's headline, Monument Protest Leaves Residual Effects on Downtown Pittsburgh, Chatham. That's been happening a lot here lately. We got a lot of folks coming here. So for a lot of people who are listening, can you break down what the issues are with the statute, the commissioner meetings, and all of that?
So I think what we've seen happen is that over the past several months, since about April, when we were initially engaging with the United Daughters of the Confederacy around the monument, there was an initial effort to work together and revision or reimagine the statue to more appropriately reflect what we know about not just the statue, but also the circumstances in which it was placed where it is, and to do something that reflected the community better and also reflected our understanding of that history. Those conversations broke down when the daughters decided to remove themselves from that discussion.
And why did they remove themselves from the discussion?
So my understanding is that they did not have the approval of their larger chapter, the regional chapter, to enter into negotiations with Chatham County. And that there may have been some discussion amongst themselves at the local level that was acquiescing to the political view of the board. But what it did was it removed the opportunity to collaborate around the statue. And thereafter, the board asked that the statue be removed.
And that would have given them the opportunity to, on their own, come and make the plans and the way by which it would be removed, correct?
Exactly. So the hope was that in the interim, given the amount of time that they had to look at alternatives for placement of the statue, that they would identify more appropriate places to have a monument that was, by their estimation, just a commemoration to their war dead.
And that did not happen, so the board decided to do what?
So it has not happened, and the motion that was passed by our board was that the statue would be moved, that the daughters would come with a plan by October 31st, or that the statue would become trespass, abandoned property, and subject to removal. So that's where we are now.
So for those people who don't understand what is going to happen on November 1st, could you kind of walk through what November 1st looks like?
So I don't know that anything will happen on November 1st. What I do know is that after October 31st, the statue will be trespass. It will be a property that's been abandoned on county land. And my personal view is that we leave that as a matter of course for staff to deal with how it's removed. We expect that it will be a respectful and proper removal, that the statue will be stored in a safe place, so that the owners can decide where they would like to have it. And until then, we will continue the business of the county as we have been all this time. This is not, I know this has become a very compelling issue, but it is not the only thing the commissioners are dealing with. And I think
Exactly. So, my I have to say this is, and I'm not a gotcha person, but I think I'm going to say some things that is a bit of a reflection of people in the community, and that being that I'm all for everyone having their right to speak, having free speech. But when the violence becomes a part of it, and people, I think now we've had 3 weeks in a row each time they're out, where some form of violence has broken out, and it seems to be slowly but surely escalating. It's to that degree that I say I look to the leaders, not just you and not just, but all the leaders in our town, to really take a stance and say, hey, well, in my mind, I'd say, hey, you guys can't come. You're causing violence in town. It has to stop. I know people have free speech, and it's a fine line to walk, but what do you say when people make that point?
Well, I agree. I think there is a responsibility in our board to, one, not inflame the issue, but also to encourage people that in order to support our point of view, or in order to support the motion that was passed by the commissioner, we do not have to be confrontational. I think that there are safe ways of expressing your perspectives and your views, and I think that having those conversations amongst ourselves is fine. But I don't condone confrontation. I think that the fact that Pittsboro businesses are suffering is a problem. I think it's a problem for our larger community, because we don't want to become a place where the division is what kind of draws everyone's attention. And right now, that is where we are.
And to that, again, as I said earlier, I really want the show to talk about the dynamics of many things happening in Chatham County, but we've been bogged down almost like an albatross with this topic. So, but we have to talk about it. So this Saturday, I'm sorry. So this Saturday, there is a planned group of folks who support the statue and the Confederate flags, and from what I'm told, in the numbers of the hundreds that are expected to come here in our town. And I have to, Reverend Lassiter asked me to convey this message. I told him that I would. He said that he would ask that no black people at all go downtown, and I told him I would let that be said by him. He is planning something by the Confederate flag that's been erected by Horton Middle School. And I do know that there is a group of people who want to show the loving, neighborly side of Pittsboro also planning something on that day. Again, not to put you on the spot, but to those people in Pittsboro, if there is any word that you have to say about this Saturday, which I wish it was like, hey, we're talking about some music or a big food festival, but what would you say about that specifically to this Saturday?
So I respect his point of view, but I would say that people should go about their ordinary courses of their lives. I think that people of color should feel comfortable to come into Pittsboro if and when they choose. I think we should move about as freely as we have. We should shop and eat and do whatever we normally do in Pittsboro. And I actually encourage people to not be afraid. That I think our law enforcement is fully aware of what's happening, has stayed on top of the issues, and we have, of course, had challenges. I mean, it only takes one person not following protocols or not behaving appropriately to cause trouble. But for the large part, most people have been able to operate safely in these spaces, even with the confrontation, with the disagreements, with the protests happening. And so my feeling is that we do what we would normally do. Come into Pittsboro, enjoy lunch. You don't have to engage with the protesters, but you can support the community by simply showing up.
And October is such a beautiful month, and it's a good time to be outside and to be downtown. And it's one of the times that downtown Pittsboro looks very picturesque. Yeah. And so to that point, I would hate to think that anyone's going to keep someone from enjoying the beauty of the weather and all of that. So early voting just started. We got voting happening here in Chatham County. I will not ask you your take on who's going to win, who's going to lose. I will ask you the importance of issues that some of our new commissioners and mayor will be looking at, and what the projection for the next few years looks like in Chatham County. So tell us what this vote means that's happening coming up.
I think that whoever's in positions in leadership in Pittsboro and in Chatham in general are going to have all of the challenges that come with growth, right? So you have the good and you have the difficult that comes with growth. So whoever's coming in has to, one, accept the lay of the land. We are poised for historic growth, which means potentially historic change. So I think people that are visionary, people that are willing to do some hard work, sitting on our boards should require work. There's a lot to be thought through, a lot to be worked through, a lot to be negotiated, and to keep in mind that there are people in our community for whom leadership really is the answer to jobs and housing, and access to health care. So I hope that whoever's in these positions is willing to think about how we protect our environment, how we ensure that there is affordable housing in Pittsboro, how we ensure that our streets remain safe and walkable, and kids can still get to and from school by walking, riding bicycles. You know, growth should not mean that we become exactly like we've seen growth happen in communities around us. Growth should happen in a way that works for Pittsboro and the county.
And to that, to always end on a positive, you know, we had so many cool things happening over the past few weeks. We had the Chatham County Fair, which I did not make it because there's so many other things happening. I heard it was a great event this year. Heard that great music, great rides. We had Shikori, we had Pepperfest. I mean, you know, we have some very cool things going on. We got things happening in the Beverage District. I saw, is there a dinner, something happening at Farrington coming up? I saw that you might be.
Today.
I like to, is that today?
Yes.
Can I get that ticket right quick, y'all? No, so see, there are, is it a tasting?
It's Terra Vita's food event. So.
Okay, I need a media pass. Hey, John, you still got that media pass we can use to go to the, so yeah, we got a lot of cool things happening here, and we need to be able to, and that is, you know, on Friday nights here, me and John Delaforce of the Circle City Recording, we are doing a Check the Sound issue of Chatham County, where we talk about the cool things happening here in Chatham County. We talk about the local music happening. We do it on Friday night. We're going to highlight local musicians and the chefs and all that. So we do have a segment that is going to talk about the positive, the music, the art. I mean, we have a great art community in all forms of art around here. Dance, of course, music, the visual arts, and those are the other aspects that we need to be talking about, and we will be talking about for sure. So this Friday night, Check the Sound, live from Circle City Recording. There will be no issues, I promise. We're going to talk about what's happening at our local music scene here. We're going to talk about the food here. We're going to be highlighting some local musicians and music that we like. And you're going to be hearing some music that you're not hearing in the mainstream. So we do have that happening this Friday right here. So, yeah, we're going to accentuate the positives happening in Chatham County. How about that?
That sounds wonderful.
I appreciate you. It's about lunchtime. I'm still going to be on this mic, but, you know, we got some good places to go to eat here right around us, right here in Chatham County. So as it get right here in Pittsboro and in Chatham County. So it gets close to lunchtime. That's certainly something I'm thinking about. Karen Howard, won't you come back to Focus on Chatham and Talk with Taj and Chatham County Line when you have a moment?
Absolutely.
I appreciate you. I'm going to play some music by my friends, the Circle Six from Morgantown, West Virginia. This is called Music Business, all right?
It's the music business with managers and critics, promoters and narrators. But what happened to musicians? It's that music business with managers and critics, promoters and narrators. But what happened to musicians? It's that music business with managers and critics, promoters and narrators. But what happened to musicians? It's that music business with managers and critics, promoters and narrators. But what happened to musicians? I search all across the land, spreading the word about my band. Refuse to wait for fate to land, to paper little intern hands. Hologram, Warner Brothers, Capricorn among some others. CT6 and how we hit flicks by worldly brothers. Steelers undercover, build raps from heavenly music. Pete the Jimmy, Illy knows his shit is showing proofs. And Circle 6 is the new shit. Send you this, don't lose it. I'm passing out my number to your kids, you better use it. I've been mad, promises broken. Sign the words I use as tokens. Smoking, token, jokers, snorting, coking, fucking hookers. Say they know this roller got connect like Ayatollah. For every major player from East Coast to California, so just tell them that I know ya. Future will be golden, and me and you kid will We'll keep this music business rolling. We start music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happens to musicians inside? Music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happens to musicians inside? Music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happens to musicians inside? Music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happens to musicians? Now once upon a time, not long ago, I had a paranoid delusion that I lost my flow. I went to the teacher, Mr. KRS-One, to teach you how I lost it. He said, I don't know, maybe yes, son. Depends if you rock the mic on any given night and kept the crowd hype, cause your shit be sounding tight. I said, yes, indeed, you know me, I'm like graffiti. It be a while before the thoughts can paint over my memory. Inevitably, I'll be the one with the sun. I run third eye religion for your children's 411. My vocabulary is never statuary. Keep your ass moving as the show improves. And from the last to the first, lyrical concepts on the spurs. The verse that I burst, the radio tells me not to curse. So first thing I'd like to say, fuck all radio play. Underground is my sound and the way that I stage. Je parler avec les mots that will keep you on your toes. As bilinguals dropping singles won't become commercial jingles. Let your mind mingle with the lingo that I bring you. Let your mind mingle with the lingo that I bring you. As I bring enough respect, I need to set wrecked with the intellect. Check it back and back to every set. It's music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happened to musicians? It's music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happened to musicians? It's music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happened to musicians? It's music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happened to musicians? I act about as pop as Chewbacca drunk on vodka. When I hear hip-hop knocked by some college alternative rocker, knock it back quick the way you came from, son. Your pretty boy dimple, simple lyrics and no bass drum. Your face one of the most ferocious, braggadocious, supercalifragilistic is how I wrote this. Quote this, always keep hip hop in my heart. I kept hip hop in my heart from the start for the love of the art. Hard bark, the xylophone, phonetics are off the bucket dome. Ain't nobody staying home when P.O. grabs a microphone. Heads are coming out my drone, see me kill it like a bone. Never leave the mic alone until they take me off my throne. Retire from the hip hop game with induction in the Hall of Fame. Function in my life is plain to keep respect check with my name. Make my own decision with that absolute precision. Continually pop the ism as I continue with my mission to diss and dismiss those with skills on the wish list. Whether you miss the whole, you miss it, I'm keeping your whole family twisted. It's that schizo from the Circle 6 show. Hit up in the spread and split the real from the bullshit. Tools ripped through any motherfucking fool's click. There's bullshit on my click or any other Circle 6. You heard of this? Well, it's shit, now I'm about to murder it. Lyrics and your favorite simply by the way I worded it. Learn your shit, turn it quick into some form of compliment. For your solid sex, I'm from accounted by my dominance. Music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happens to musicians inside? Music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happens to musicians inside? Music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happens to musicians inside? Music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happens to musicians inside? Music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happens to musicians inside? Music business with managers and critics, promoters and our rollers. But what happened to musicians? What happened to musicians? What happened to lyricism?
At some point I will. So yes, we're live and back, and I have good friend, like a relative, Mr. Daniel Harris here on Focus on Chatham. And Daniel, welcome to Focus on Chatham. You should have been on here a long time ago, man.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, we're going to get right into it. You called me the other day. You were driving, you had gotten in town, I think from Maryland, and you called me and you said, man, do you know there's a Confederate flag right across Horton? And you sounded heated, which understandably so. Tell me, well, I know what your reaction is, but tell the people listening what that was like when you were riding by Horton and you saw that.
I was in pure shock. I grew up here, and as I was growing up, the city was in a little bit of a transition away from being a very segregated town. And I grew up, when I was growing up, there was still signs up, for example, in a washerette where we would often go to wash our clothes. white on one side, black or colored on the other side. Weren't allowed to go on the other side.
And that won't for the clothes. It won't for like white clothes here and the colored clothes there. That was
No,
for the people,
absolutely.
right?
It was people. And down the middle with a hole in the center, so that if you needed to get change, okay, you'd have a change machine on both sides. And if one side ran out of change, you could reach over with your hand, but not walk over the other side, but reach over there with your hand to get the change out, opposed to going.
You couldn't take your whole body over
No,
there.
you couldn't go in. You just reach your hand over there. Okay, and that sufficed. It made it possible so that the business could keep on operating without upsetting the social norm at the time. I remember that kept on going till about 1969. When I saw that flag, after going around the circle and coming down the hill and seeing that flag, it seemed to me that I was like going back in time before the erection of that statue. With that statue, I think was erected back in 1920. Yeah. So I'm looking up at that flag. I'm like, that's not supposed to be there. And I saw the camera there, and it's a little bit intimidating. I said, that flag should not be there. And it just reminded me of how I grew up. I remember my brother going to Horton School. My parents went to Horton School.
My mom went there, you know?
Yeah, my parents would be in their late 90s now. So it has a long-standing tradition, named after a famous black poet. Then you learn about that person in the 6th grade in North Carolina history. It's very famous, Moses Horton. And I see how it's positioned. It's kind of it's not directly in front of the school, but it's close enough. You know?
Oh, it's
very close enough.
Very
so
much
there was so there was a lot of thought that they placed that was considered, I think, in placing that flag. I was a little bit offended and taken back by it because, it is a symbol of rebellion. It's not, to me, a symbol of history. Yes, it is part of our history, but it's a symbol of rebellion and a treason, okay, as an American citizen, and we shouldn't have that. And I know that when I was coming up and knew about those norms, I remember when I was a child at the fair, there were some people campaigning for George Wallace, and I couldn't read at that time. I was a little boy, and they put a little pin on me with George Wallace pen and gave me the balloons. I was happy to get the pen and the balloons. I said, oh, I got a balloon, with helium, And my parents saw that. They're like, come over here. What's with the, that little parent, come over here. And we had, they grabbed us, me and my brother. My brother knew better. He could read, but they don't put him on blast.
I know your brother David. I'll remind him of it.
But my parents took us around the corner, popped those balloons, and threw those pens away. But it's the audacity of those people putting that stuff on us.
It's the audacity of the flag.
They didn't ask my parents' permission, and they did it. And I'm having to drive down the street with that flag, the audacity of that flag being placed so close to a historically black school. That school was a segregated school. It's not now, thank God. But the whole point is to stand in the face of what we've accomplished and integrating and being more inclusive. It's a bad thing. It's a bad omen. And people in this community need to speak out against it.
Agreed.
Okay, they need to do something. I know that we do not want to have any violence or any kind of repercussions that could hurt the community economically. However, something needs to be done.
You know, I said this, and I'm sure you can identify with this, but I remember being a little kid. You know, I was born in 69, so 74, 75, 76. If you would have told me, you know, even up when I was 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, if you would have told me that at age 50, we would be, I thought then, by the time I'm 50, we're going to be flying back and forth to the moon, and we're going to be in these space shuttles. Everyone's going to have I just thought we'd be so far ahead. And that's what really, you know, I like to sit back and watch what I like to call Earth TV. Like, if you're just watching Earth TV as an outer space being. You know what I'm saying? And you're watching, but like, I never saw this twist in the plot. You know what I'm saying? You never saw this twist in the plot coming. They're going to go back to this? That's really what's bothered me deeply, is that we're moving backwards so much with this, you know?
You know, the age of Trumpism. Yeah, I said it, Trumpism. And I know there are people in the area who are very much into this.
It's an open platform, dude. You say what you want.
I know, but I will just dare say that he has given permission to the worst elements of our society.
And to that, and here's the thing, I agree to disagree, but I let myself get roped into a little Facebook conversation with someone about the economy. And this is what bothers me about, you know, I don't care who you support, whether it's Bush, Trump, Obama, what have you. But for some reason, it seems like these people want to call names, get ugly real quick, and be demeaning. And I'm like, okay, where does this come from? We should be able to agree to disagree, be cool, break bread, and be like, all right, that's your point of view, it's my point of view. But when you start the name calling and the bashing, that's the part that really gets me.
Yeah, it's, you know, and a lot of, and I challenge my white evangelical brothers and sisters. I'm a black evangelical. And I'm going to tell you something. It's not a good thing to give permission to this stuff, to be passive about it, or to support it as a Christian.
You think they should say, what would Jesus do to that?
Absolutely.
You know
and a symbol of rebellion, you know, such as that flag, is something we should not even have in front of us. You know, I'm going to remind my evangelical friends about what the Bible says about rebellion. Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. Bad witchcraft, put it like that.
Because that good witchcraft will be just fine, but don't bring that bad witchcraft over here.
Don't touch yeah.
So you know, I like to always, we discuss, we define, and we deliver. And as I said to Karen, you know, like me, you're from North Carolina. You lived in Baltimore. I grew up in Baltimore. We both, our families have deep history here. And so we've overcome a lot as a community. We've overcome a lot as black folks. Moving forward, what is the positive that can come out of this? Let's glean something positive that can come out of this.
An agreement, a commitment, an agreement to never allow divisive elements such as that Confederate flag to be erected so that our children can see that and our children can be used to having that in front of them. Explain to them. And right now, a lot of the children who go to that school, Horton School, are probably the grandchildren of my contemporaries. I would suggest that the grandparents get involved and tell them about the history and about what it really means.
So to that, and you know, we both stand on the shoulders of great family members and great history. Definitely Brother John Ruffin and Dottie Ruffin, who without them, Taj Talk could not be possible. You know, my granny, Louise Jenkins, my great-granny, Sarah Knight, her dad, Alexander Anderson, who bought land that I now have inherited down on Old Sanford Road. We stand on the shoulders of some folks who've done some very positive, great works. My granny was the nurse for Dr. Mathieson in this town for many years. So, as a matter of fact, John said that she was the one who, when he had his tonsils taken out, you know, that she was the nurse there. So we both, although people may think we are outsiders, more so me than you, we have a great history here. And this, you know, this red clay, this water, although it's a little dirty right now, it runs deep, it runs deep in our veins. And the love of this town and community, it does run deep in our veins. My granny's buried at the St. Bart's Cemetery. One of the first churches I ever went to as a little kid is that memory of going to St. Bart's. Same thing, Martin Street Baptist Church, my grandma Hall on my dad's side. I don't want to leave her out, and Papa Hall. But we have a rich history in this town, so I don't want people to think that we're sitting up here just waxing poetic, trying to hear ourselves talk. We care a lot about what happens in Pittsburgh because it's deeply ingrained in us, you know?
Yeah, and my parents were active in the community as well as my sister. She's really out there. Hermina Green, she's very
much so.
Very active. And our roots go back in this county as far as 1760.
Wow. Wow. So yeah.
This is not a good thing. We've endured a lot, you know, been silent about a lot during those periods, during the years before civil rights.
Sure.
But this is beyond civil rights. I went to school. I didn't have a chance to go to Horton School myself because the first year, it was the first year of integration.
So you went to Northwood the first year it was open?
Well, no. I went to Moncure School. I grew up in Moncure, and the first year of integration mandatory integration. Because the previous year there was voluntary integration. Voluntary integration took place in 1967, 68.
Okay.
Okay. That's long after Brown versus the board with all deliberate speed. You know. So my brother, he went to Horton School until I believe the 5th grade. In his first year of voluntary integration, he went to Moncure School. His first day was a baptism in spit. I want
sorry to hear that. Indeed.
Get beyond this thing. You know, I was fortunate enough I didn't go to school that year. I mean, but you know, it didn't scar him too much. He's a successful lawyer right now. So
he is. Yeah, he is. He did all right. Yeah,
but
he's
the thing
done all
is,
right.
I went to school. My first year of school was in 1968, 69 at Moncure School. But had I not gone to Moncure School, and had it been mandatory segregation, I'd have gone to Horton. So I avoided that. But, you know, the thing is, while my brother was in school, I'd go to my mother, I'd ride with my mother to the washerette, and had to basically, Mom, why can't we go to the other side? I asked her, why couldn't we go to the other side of the washerette? And she would say, shh, shh. I'd go with my Aunt Novella, and she would tell me, shh, shh. It was like, didn't want to cause any trouble.
You had to know your place.
We're not docile anymore. So we're not going to allow offensive symbols to be erected in our faces.
And the fact that you have been in Pittsburgh and Chatham County and you're able to bring some real history and real context is why you probably need to run our Chatham history and get some folks up here so we can talk about this Chatham history. You know, we've talked about what's happening this weekend. We wish no badness on anyone. What I really hope is that here very soon we don't have to talk about this anymore. I'm ready to talk about some other stuff. I want to talk about some food and some music and some art and talk about affordable housing. And I really want to talk about getting this water much cleaner than it is. But it's 1 o'clock. What you got to say to the people, brother, before you go?
Well, first of all, thank you again for having me. And I want to give a shout out to John and Dottie.
John and Dottie, of course, always, always, always. And so for John and Dottie, we're going to play this. So I got a guy, friend of mine from Baltimore, didn't know he was from North Carolina. His name is Joel Treese, cousins with a man out of Atlanta, Jermaine Dupree. And I said, hey, man, you've been playing music for a long time. Why don't you send me some music to check out? So he sent me some music to check out. Check out this song from Brother Joel Treese called Because I'm Happy. ToshTalk.com, Chatham County Line, Focus on Chatham, Brother Daniel Harris. Appreciate you, brother.
Cloudy days, they don't bother me, as long as you are standing next to me. stolen away from you. Cuts the clouds 'cause your love's shining through. 'Cause I'm happy, yeah. The way you make me feel. Said I'm happy, yeah. 'Cause I know that love is real. 'Cause I'm happy, yeah. And there's nothing you can do. Said I'm happy, yeah. And I wrote the song just for you. You're the melody that I sing. Strings and chords when I say your name. Just a simple I love you will help to change these skies from gray to blue. And when I'm down and not doing my best, the thought of you brings me to happiness. I want to shout for the whole world to see. You're the reason that I say, oh, 'cause I'm happy, yeah. The way you make me feel. Said I'm happy, yeah. 'Cause I know that love is real. 'Cause I'm happy, yeah. And there's nothing you can do. Said I'm happy, yeah. And this song is just for you. Cause I'm happy, yeah. Said I'm happy, yeah. Cause I'm happy, yeah. Said I'm happy, yeah. Visions in my mind, they tend to speak to me, telling me what's wrong in this world and how it should be. If we turn back the hands of time, we'll see that all we need to be is love. Love. All we need is love. All I wanna do is live, love, and be free. So why can't we just let the other man be? Live your life to fullest, won't you worry about me? Because you know what I found in me is love. Love. All we need is love. Open your mind, let your heart be free. You do you while I do me. Don't you worry about what may be, 'cause we found love, baby. Hand in hand, we reach the top. I'm black and white, brown, we can't stop. This land was started as a melting pot. We'll take it back, you'll see. Love, we need love. Love, we need love. We'll take it back with love. We need love. Love, we need love. We'll take it back with love. We need love. Love, we need love. We'll take it back with love. We need love. Love, we need love. Open your mind, let your heart be free. You do you while I do me. Don't you worry about what may be, 'cause we found love, baby. Hand in hand, we'll reach the top. Black and white, brown, we can't stop. This land was started as a melting pot. We'll take it back, you'll see.